Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about something huge happening in New York City. We're looking at the incredible pressure on its power grid. And believe me, this is a story that might start with a single building, but it has consequences for the entire city.
So you might have seen this happen, or maybe it's even happening to you. You're trying to do a simple upgrade for your apartment or your business, and bam, you get that notice from Con Edison. Service denied. It's so frustrating, right? But the reason for it, well, it's often a lot bigger than just your building's wiring. It actually points to a massive strain on the whole city system.
Okay, so look, sometimes it's just a paperwork error or maybe some equipment isn't up to code. You can fix that. But the real showstopper, the one that affects entire neighborhoods, is that first one, grid capacity. And in plain English, that just means the local network is completely maxed out. There's literally no more power to give.
And this isn't just happening in one or two spots. It's a citywide problem, what we're calling the big squeeze. Think of New York's power supply as having this safety cushion, right? It's the gap between the power we have and the power we need. The problem is, right now, that cushion is shrinking fast, especially on those super hot summer days.
And what we have here is a classic case of two powerful forces moving in completely opposite directions. On one side, you've got state policies squeezing the power supply. They want to close down these things called peaker plants. Those are the smaller power stations that fire up really quickly when demand is super high. But at the exact same time, city policies are causing this massive surge in demand by pushing to electrify everything. And that, right there, is the heart of the problem.
I mean, listen to this. The state's Public Service Commission chairman, Rory Christian, has been very clear about this. He's talking about the blackouts we saw years ago during major heat waves. And he's basically saying, we cannot let that happen again. The risk is real, and the people in charge know it.
And that warning is so critical because, while all this is happening, the city is rolling out policies that are pushing the grid harder than it's ever been pushed before. A giant piece of this new demand comes from a really ambitious climate law that targets New York's biggest polluters.
This chart really tells the whole story, doesn't it? It shows you exactly why this is happening. Just look at that number. Buildings are responsible for a staggering 2/3 of the city's greenhouse gas emissions. So it makes sense. If you want to fight climate change in New York, you absolutely have to start with the buildings.
So the city's big answer is this law, Local Law 97. And to comply with it, we're talking about tens of thousands of large buildings having to literally rip out their old gas and oil boilers and furnaces. And what are they replacing them with? All electric systems, things like heat pumps. This shifts a huge amount of energy use right onto the electrical grid.
And this isn't some pie-in-the-sky plan for the distant future. The timeline is incredibly aggressive. The first compliance period, it's already started, and the limits get way stricter in 2030. So you've got this immense pressure on thousands of buildings to make these power-hungry upgrades pretty much all at the same time.
But wait, it's not just about decarbonizing buildings. There's another law that's adding even more strain. It's a well-intentioned law designed to keep people safe from extreme heat, but it's about to cause another massive spike in power usage, and right at the time when the grid is at its most vulnerable.
Yeah, to deal with the very real dangers of summer heat waves, the City Council passed a bill that mandates universal access to air conditioning. Right now, about 9% of New York City homes don't have AC, and that adds up to hundreds of thousands of apartments.
The effect this is going to have on the grid, it's just enormous. We are talking about adding hundreds of megawatts of brand new demand. To put that in perspective, that's like dropping the demand of an entire medium-sized power plant onto the grid, specifically on the hottest summer afternoons when the system is already screaming for relief.
And here's where it gets kind of crazy. Here's the big contradiction. At the exact moment the city is mandating more air conditioning, which of course drives up that peak summer demand, the state is pushing to close the very peaker plants that were designed for exactly that job, to handle that surge.
So what this all adds up to is a massive looming collision. You've got all these different policies, and they all come from a good place, right? Fighting climate change, protecting public health, but they're now on a direct collision course with the physical reality, the actual limits of our electrical grid.
This table just lays it out so clearly. On the one hand, you've got policies trying to electrify absolutely everything, which sends demand through the roof. And on the other hand, you have different policies that have shut down or opposed new power sources, everything from the Indian Point nuclear plant to local gas peaker plants. So you're shrinking the supply while jacking up the demand. This really puts the city in a tough spot. I mean, it gets almost 80% of its electricity from natural gas, but there's a lot of resistance to upgrading existing plants or building new, more efficient ones. And what happens?
All that pressure just gets dumped onto a grid that's being asked to do way more with way less.
And this leaves New York City, its leaders, and frankly every single person living there with a really difficult question about how we're going to power the future. And so far, that question is very much unanswered. And really, that's the ultimate challenge here, isn't it? How do you balance these ambitious, necessary climate goals with the absolute, non-negotiable need for a reliable power grid? Finding a way to build a green future without risking the present, without leaving people in the dark, that is the critical puzzle that New York has to solve, and fast.